Yo, what's up E7 fam? Pat here, back with another video, and as you guys know, for Epic 7's 5th anniversary, we're getting a lot of selectors. We already talked about the Moonlight 5-star selector, as well as the Red, Green, Blue 5-star selector. I will link both of those videos down in this video's description, but today, we're going to be talking entirely about the 5-star artifact selector. And I am not alone. Please welcome Orbis Caster Clash winner, DivineShadow, my good friend, and overall handsome gentleman.
No, that was like months ago. I'm surprised we're still talking about that. I'm just your friend, Pat. I'm your friend. I'm here to get into all these artifacts tier after tier. We've talked a little bit about this. We've actually been planning this video for a while. Then the selector came out, decided to mash those ideas of talking about artifacts together. I do think they're interesting. They're alternatives at a lot of times, and they also augment characters in ways to do interesting new strategies. I think Betty Tachi is a great example. Not selectable here, as well as Golden Rose, which we'll get into, but a lot of artifacts here that can help boost the playstyle. We're specifically talking towards, obviously, early to mid-game players. If you're late game, you probably know what you need, right? Just slot in another Holy Sack, get yourself up to plus 30, or, get that one artifact that really enables that play style that you've been looking to verge into. But for newer and mid-game players, we're here to help out as always, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. Because one of the things is I've been playing for a really long time. I have not been a new player for a really long time. And it's always good to have another brain beside you that can kind of help level things. Because we went through and talked about all these artifacts extensively. And as you can see how we have the tier list structured, we decided to split it up into PvE and PvP, and we kind of really talked about a lot of the use cases. So you can expect for a lot of these things, you'll hear things like why we think it's good or bad, where we think it's used, who's using it, and then, just kind of give our general 2 cents on the thing. So let's start it off by talking about the staple PvE artifacts. These are the artifacts I think that every player that's in the newer intermediate range should have access to. Some of these don't scale amazingly well into the late game for a super late game player. Like when you get to the point where you're one-shotting all of the hunts and you're basically doing Dagger Sakar stuff, some of this falls off. But until then, I think it's pretty staple. Like with the previous video for RGB5s, everything is organized alphabetically by tier. So starting with our first PvE artifact, we have Bloodstone. So Bloodstone is essentially an artifact that allows a Ranger class character to kind of function as a healer. It's pretty good for some of the Dagger Sakar challenges. It's pretty good in Abyss, especially Challenge Mode Abyss, where you can't use a Soul Weaver a lot of the times. So that's kind of its general use. It's kind of allows your Rangers to play more of a supportive role when you don't really have access to specific Soul Weavers or can't use specific Soul Weavers.
Yeah, this really comes into access with Fire Shuri and the Landy as well, enabling you to turn them into those healers, as you said. Although there is some playability. I have a friend of mine who obviously loves to play the counter Landy with the Bloodstone. It's a nice little combination for surprise sustain, but applicable everywhere you want, really.
Yeah, it's definitely better, I feel like, on AoE damage dealers, because it's the total damage that Bloodstone deals is the health that you're getting back. So it's definitely, while you can use it on Red Shuri, like Divine said, characters like Landy, for example, in Raid is really powerful, and it does have some PvP applications with counter Landy, like he was saying. So overall, I think you choose Bloodstone if you are trying to clear Abyss, or you're trying to clear some of the hell raids for the first time, because I think it will end up helping you a lot, or you're trying to clear specific Dagger Sakar stuff.
Yeah, and as me and Sue were talking about before, Bloodstone is kind of one of these artifacts that I like to call floaters, which are artifacts that aren't tied to a specific character, which means it's a lot harder to get them, because you've obviously got to kind of get, if you want to call it unlucky or lucky, but you got to pull on a banner and just randomly get the thing, right? So artifacts like these, floaters as I call them, it's a little bit easier to pick them up here, especially if you don't need the plus 30 so you don't have to worry about just by happenstance picking up one later.
Yeah, that's 100% true. We will try to highlight the ones that are not tied to specific banners. If you're going to use a selector, picking up a floater, like Divine said, is definitely something that you really should consider, because Bloodstone is basically pull it randomly on another banner, get it from Powder Shop, get it from a Mystic Summon if it just happens to be up, or use your Selector. That's kind of it. Next up, let's talk about Rod of Amaryllis. So this essentially boosts the healing capability of a Soul Weaver, or it gives access to healing to a support Soul Weaver that otherwise might not have it, such as Dien. Dien is probably the most famous example for this. It's just really good in a lot of PvE scenarios when you just really need that extra healing. Like maybe you don't have a huge roster, your healing capability just really isn't there. That's where I feel like Rod of Amaryllis really, really shines. Could really help you again out in a lot of these like mid to early game scenarios, especially like I said, Abyss, Labyrinth, things like that.
Yeah, when you don't have really the sustain or you're having trouble keeping it up, Rod of Amaryllis is really good for that, especially when you are in a composition or a match where it's kind of a DPS race against your tank. Since it does focus the lowest HP target, it does help you a little bit of that, a little bit in those scenarios. And obviously it also works well with characters who have multiple non-attack skills. Wouldn't really see it on an Inos because her 3 and her 1 do.
Montmorency is one that really comes to mind. I know a lot of people like playing Tome on Montmo, and Tome's probably optimal, but when you're first starting out and healing options are pretty bad, Rod on Montmorency can put in a lot of work because of the frequency at which she spams her skills.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another good example. Obviously, Destina, if you got her handy, a Ruel, plenty of those characters.
Yeah, just like with Bloodstone, correct me if I'm wrong, Divine, but Rod is also like a floater artifact. Like this is not tied to any banner, which is another reason to give it some thought.
Definitely, I would say the reason it's here is because of that versatility if you want to cruise through the early game. But I don't think there are too many strategies where Rod is necessary. However, as you were talking about before, there are some Abyss floors where Bloodstone is very, very much encouraged. So think about that use. Well, obviously we've got one here a little bit more general purpose that falls off later, and one you're going to need later into your game. So think about that. And if we're going to speak about something that has that all-purpose use, Song of Stars is a great example. It will help you out early game by just giving the target debuff, which gives you that little bit of extra hit chance, that little bit of extra damage on top. But more importantly, like it's something that like I like to call it a cherry on top, right? Because you want the defense break, right, to increase your damage. You want the attack buff, but Song of Stars gives that little extra that changes thresholds in the game for kill or not kill. And I think you know that a lot because you use that. You've used this on some of your hunts previously.
Yes, I use Song of Stars on both my Katie's 13 one-shot and my Banshee 13 one-shot. Certain things, like Divine said, are just not possible without Song of Stars. We talked to Tristan Wolf last night about this. He kind of disagrees, but that's because he's the PvE god and he's got it all figured out. But for us mere mortals, Song of Stars is like the big PvE artifact that makes the impossible possible for some things. And that's why I think I have to give it the staple status here. You can get this on Asaria's artifact or banner. So like if you wanted a 2-for-1, you could. I think Asaria has a side story. If she does, you could pick her up with Song of Stars. You don't necessarily have to pick up this thing with your Selector. But overall, yeah, this is really strong for anybody that is really looking to push the bounds of PvE and clear a lot of PvE content.
Yes, Asaria does also have a side story. Just putting that to rest, no doubt. But yeah, in addition to that, I really do like this artifact, as I said before, because it's kind of just like a set it and forget it kind of artifact, where it's just like, I have my Asaria, she does defense break, she also does target with this, and it stays on her eternally until I forget to take it off for the one piece of content in the game when I go in the Hell Raid, and I'm like, oh no, I've got 3 debuffs, I've messed everything up. But yeah, other than that one niche case, it pretty much sits on her eternally, right? And Asaria is a character I use for most content eternally. She pairs so well with Tenebria, which I'm sure you talked about in your last video. And this is the artifact that brings her above and beyond to the next level, right? I was using Glow Wings on her before. Glow Wings is okay. This is significantly better. But something to keep in mind if you want the PvE.
Moving on, we have Time Matter. This one, I'm not actually sure who it's tied to. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. I believe this is tied to No, I think it's actually tied to Ludwig, is the banner, I believe Time Matter is. But Time Matter is this really good PvE artifact that kind of boosts your damage for hunts, much like Song of Stars. Like, sometimes both of them are used in tandem if you're using a mage. Vivian is the most famous example of this. Time Matter on Vivian makes certain Azamantic 13 compositions possible. It's good in Banshee 13 on Vivian as well. It also has some late game applications. I personally play it on Zeo. I've talked to a lot of like Emperor and Legend players who feel that that's copium, that's not a real thing that you do. But this thing on certain characters, it provides the juice, man. It does some real heavy lifting even in PvP versus some stuff. But primarily, I think its best use is on one-shots for hunts.
Do correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe Ludwig is one of the season 1 characters who does not have a side story as well.
Yes, they think that is true. So, like, only on his raid ups. I don't think he actually has one. Ludwig honestly feels like a pretty forgotten character. Like, Epic 7 is a game about heirs, about the 7 different heirs, and he's one of them, and he feels like he just never has any impact. I'm sure Divine could write a whole essay and do a whole video on, I guess, the shortcomings of Epic 7's narrative.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that sometime. I just, it just feels weird because, like, I'll say this as a small aside. It feels really weird because Ludwig has such an involved, interesting story and themes that actually pair up very well with a lot of characters. Like, Ludwig's, like, whole thing of, like, I am the last of my race, I'm all alone, I'm steeped in this deep loneliness that has me disconnected from other people and disaffected from them, resonates well with Ross because he's seen all of his loved ones go away, world after world. Resonates well with Alencia. Obviously, she's had to make very similar decisions and had a very troubling thing. Resonates well with Luna, right? Not even thinking about that. His power, the aspect of his power, like when he's sitting in the chair well above everyone, like with that smug attitude, seeing everyone else is beneath him because of his race and because of the power that comes with it, resonates well with Mort. You see how many characters this person actually connects to? It even extends into the current episode 5 story where there's a character in there who's less than likable, but that person is disaffected and lonely in a way that, like, if we had a Ludwig that grew through his experiences from chapter to chapter and then met that character, could have said, I was like you at a time.
Yeah, he's just criminally underutilized, like I feel like a lot of characters in the narrative. Anyways, moving on to niche PvE. These ones are definitely usable in PvE, but I think they have much smaller use cases. First up is Cradle of Life, which is tied to Sigurd's banner, I believe. I'll let you actually field this one, Divine, because like I'm pretty sure this is an Ancient Inheritance like only thing.
It's an Ancient Inheritance thing mostly because there are certain thresholds where you want enough debuffs, and Cradle of Light is excellent there because you don't want too many Junkyard Dogs. You do want some Cradle of Life. And just the boss missing you can do a lot. And that's actually also what I'd say for. It's just like putting up mischance on a boss, very powerful. Putting up decrease attack, very powerful. It gives access to certain warriors who don't necessarily have those damage decreasing artifact status effects on them to inflict them, which kind of helps with the mitigation, reduces the amount of healing you want, and makes your comp more sustainable, right? But beyond those PvE uses that we just outlined, not too much use. You pick this up if you already have plenty of the other artifacts and you want to make hitting the boss in Ancient Inheritance a less painstaking process.
Yeah. Next up is Dignus Orb. This is tied to Vivian. So this is very similar to Time Matter. It works specifically for Vivian in certain Banshee 13 and Azamantic 13 compositions based on the teammates and how you choose to build Vivian. Time Matter or Dignus Orb might be better. Dignus Orb is usually the safer option. Time Matter actually scales pretty well into the late game, which is why I think it's a staple PvE one because it has more use cases. Whereas Dignus Orb is pretty much just for Vivian and then has a decent use case for top model Luluka in PvP, but she doesn't really see any play, at least of the recording of this video. So yeah, that's pretty much why you'd want to pick up Dignus Orb, is because it's probably the easiest to use artifact On Vivian, if you decide to use her as your hunt character, which I feel like a lot of new and intermediate players will use because she's free from the expert hunt challenges. But yeah, that's pretty much it. All there is to say about Dignus Orb.
Yeah, the next attack increase is interesting, but I don't really think we see it. I don't think we've really seen a character that takes full advantage of it yet in a PvP sense.
Yeah.
When that character comes around, I can see it as being more popular, but until then.
Yeah, it's a good artifact. It's just that there's very few mages that could take advantage of it, and the ones that can, like Book, is probably competing for it because Book is just overtuned. Next up, we have Sword of Judgment. This one is tied to Red Litica. This one is used in some Dagger Sakar challenges, like Hall of Trials. It's also got very fringe use cases and some Abyss content. That's kind of all I really remember this being used for. Mostly Hall of Trials, I feel like, is the main use case. You're only really using it if you're trying to push for like a high score in that game mode or finish a specific Dagger Sakar challenge. I don't really think that there's many other use cases for this thing.
Yeah. For me, this is just a classic. It's the decision of like, okay, I don't need Bloodstone on my Shuri for this Abyss floor, so let me try to get some extra damage here.
Yeah.
With the Sword of Judgment instead. And, it's a Lux-based artifact. It only goes up to 20%. There's artifacts that are arguably around that range that are much more valuable. Obviously, we do have something like, we do have Counterproc Sword there, Elbris Ritual Sword there.
So compared to a lot of other luck-based artifacts, it's not exactly the best. And like, even then, like for a character like Shuri, sometimes like Rosa Hargana could get you there over Sword of Judgment as far as like luck-based artifacts go. So yeah, like this is like a high roll artifact for people that are really trying to min-max specific PvE content.
Yeah. And that's what it is, right? And I just want to be clear, obviously this tier list isn't going from SSS down to like D as per usual. And I do want to stress that here. These niche PvE artifacts are indeed very niche. I don't recommend them for most people. But once again, if you do find yourself in a scenario where you either have picked this up by happenstance, because we do have the 110 free summons, or you really, really feel like you're suffering in one specific area of content, this is your go-to guide. But other than for that, I can't really recommend it too much. And now we're going to go into our special tier for a second here. This is the boss artifact. Get the boss song going. This is Golden Rose. This is what we'd all be picking if it wasn't not allowed as an artifact you could select. If by some miracle that's wrong, then this is amazing artifact. Enables your bruisers. It's like Sigurd's, but like with a little bit of the niche flavoring that I think makes it applicable to more units. And Sigurd Scythe was already an amazing artifact that you should have picked up a couple copies because it was just in the shop a couple weeks ago. But yeah, absolutely amazing. Absolutely fundamentally amazing. I know you're a big fan of it because you happen to be a big fan of the golden-haired lion.
Lionheart Sermon. Yeah, this free on equip this weekend that's coming out as this video is releasing. I'm going to be re-gearing my Lionheart Sermon on Golden Rose because this has been pretty much the sleeper hit of the Epic 7 World Championship. Like, we all knew this thing was kind of good when Abigail came out, but we didn't know how good. If you haven't figured out, this is the artifact that's tied to Abigail, and you can't choose Abigail, so it stands to reason you can't choose her artifact. This thing is surprisingly good on a lot of characters, and has proven that it's probably better than Sigurd's on a lot of people because it's increased damage, not increased attack like Sigurd's. I think if you're serious about PvP, if this was pickable, it'd be pretty much the one that I think a lot of us would choose. Like, I'd choose this. I'm pretty sure Divine would choose this. We talked to Redos. That's his choice. And Nori as well, another high-ranked player. That's probably his choice as well. I think even Tristan would take this. Like, this is pretty much what we all were like, yeah, we're taking Golden Rose. And then Smilegate said, no.
Oh. I mean, it's crazy because, we've talked about, like, every once in a while, artifact classes being inundated with a flood of must-play artifacts. And I just want to highlight how insane it was that Golden Rose and Prayer of Solitude were essentially back-to-back.
Yes.
For that class.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Prayer of Solitude obviously is limited. That one's also just ridiculous. And if if you could choose that, that would also be up here with we say choose this. So moving on past Gold and Rose, let's talk about PvP artifacts, which are divided up into, here you could see the rest of the tiers. Meta on 3+ units, which means that you're going to be playing it a lot. Meta on 2 units exactly. Meta on 1, specific unit. Niche cases, and then finally trash, which are stuff obviously we don't recommend. So starting off with meta on 3+ units is Elbris Ritual Sword. If you're playing a counter-based knight that happens to deal damage or has just high utility on their S1, there's a pretty high chance that Elbris Ritual Sword is the play. This is the play on Bellion. It's the play on Navy Captain Landy, who's one of the most busted units right now.
Why?
Yeah, it's good on Ilanav. It's good on Green Armin. The new character that we're getting, Brieg, I'm pretty sure this is meta on him. The problem right now is that there's so many knights that need Elbris, and there's just not enough of them to go around. Like, when we sit down and talk about knights, like, 95% of all knights are either on Arius or Elbris Ritual Sword in this game. So, just like Arius, where you want as many copies as you want, like, I personally have 6 copies of Arius. Elbris Ritual Sword is exactly the same. I have 5 copies of Elbris, and Elbris Ritual Sword is probably still the thing that I'm taking from this artifact selector.
Yeah, the only knock against it, in my opinion, is this isn't something you get with a selector. This is something you throw away all your powder for when it shows up in the shop. That's the only reason I would say maybe this isn't the choice. But essentially, other than that,
yes,
it is a wonderful choice. Only paired up next to another artifact I was just talking about that you want to see in the store. You want to see in the store a bunch. Sigurd Scythe, which is a floater, as we were talking about before. You can't get this.
No. Sigurd's is actually tied to Red Robbie, but that is also not a story selectable one.
It's kind of not a story selectable one. Sorry about that. But also, it's tied to Red Robbie.
And for reference, by the way, Elbris Ritual Sword is tied to Red Charlotte, so if you want to go for that side story, you can go for it.
So much of the red unit's really holding down all the valuable artifacts.
Yep. Well, they got to account for something, right? Because like red just feels like the worst color in the game. It always has.
You got Shepherds of the Hollow from them too. Yeah, but anyway, Sigurd Scythe, high valuable artifact. It would be the go-to if Golden Rose didn't make its appearance and started contending for its spot a little bit. But obviously, still very valuable. The lifesteal's great. The added stats are great.
Yeah. This is something you play on a bruiser that once it gets low on health, you'll get a bunch of attack and lifesteal. So it's great on characters like Edward Elric to sustain back up when he gets really low after all of the punishment and debuffs he takes. Good on Lone Crescent Bellona. Good on Red Robbie, which is why it's tied to her, for example. But yeah, like Divine was saying, Golden Rose has started to steal some of this thing's thunder. Like, this probably was, I think, the number 1 overall choice, but now that we've seen Golden Rose is kind of like slowly replacing it in a lot of cases, it's not as like insane as it used to be, but it's still played on a fair number of warriors. Like, it's the go-to for most warrior class characters that are bruisers. Like, only like some of the HP scalers like Aravi and Alencia are the ones that jump out as like not really wanting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just the go-to. It's standard. It's been in the meta for a while. You won't regret it picking it up too much. I think even myself, I've got 3 or 4 copies, and I'm still not satisfied.
Yeah. Moving on, we have Shepherd of the Hollow. This is a artifact that gives dodge. A lot of thief artifacts give 20% dodge innately, and then it gives you, I believe it is bonus attack when you are lower on health. This is pretty much the best version of the dodge-based artifact that gives bonus damage in the game. Like, there are other ones that are out there, like Moonlight Dreamblade, and things like that. There's a double-edged Decrescent now after its rework. Odin has Sword of Cycling Seasons, for example. All of these artifacts give the dodge chance and then some increase to your damage in some way. I just think Shepherd of the Hollow is the best because it is an increase to actual damage. So it just overall, it's the most offensive bonus, and I think it's usable on the most amount of characters. So I think it's the best on Savior Odin. for like general usage. Like obviously sort of cycling seasons, if you're just using her as anti-dark, is good. I think it's the best on Remnant Violet. I think it's the best on Closer Charles, for example. And even then, there's still some other thieves out there that I've probably forgotten that are really good on Shepherd of the Hollow.
Yeah, Shepherd of the Hollow, as you said, pretty standard. I do like, because it brings a lot of these thief units, especially the ones that are full of burst damage or AoE damage, it brings them from damaging to kind of like in a revenge aspect. That's what makes it so great on Rylot, because Rylot will take damage, especially if he's going into a comp with AoE damage, and that will only increase how much he's going to blow the hell up out of whatever target you decide to S3. You know, Charles benefits, obviously, from coming down with the AoE factor behind his kit. Just overall really good. I don't really think there's too much else to say. It pretty much dominates the thief category almost as much as I see the next choice you have there lined up on the list.
Yeah. Shepherd of the Hollow, by the way, is tied to Charon. Yeah, next one is Wind Rider. This one, after its rework like a year and something ago, is just, I think, in general, the best overall damage artifact for very aggressive like thieves, especially assassins, like burst characters. This is the best thing on Green Sid. Assassin Kali doesn't see too much play anymore, but she's pretty much the best on that character. It's great on Kisei. Bloodblade Corinne, the ones that have really good gear, can really take advantage of Wind Rider as well. Basically, any like low health, like glass cannon burst thief, Wind Rider is probably the option, because you get the upfront like attack, you get the 20% attack, and then you get the bonus attack. Even Last Piece Corinne, right? Like if you decide to use your A Symbol of Unity on Zahak or another specific character, Wind Rider is pretty much the next best option for Last Piece Corinne, because of how she works. You get the kill on the S2, which gives you the Neo Phantom Sword, which empowers your next attack. Great synergy with Wind Rider, allows you to just delete a tank or a bruiser instantaneously after that. It's just so good on so many PvP thieves.
I think you settled it pretty well. It's good enough, it's stable enough. I like it personally on my Green Sid, as I said before. And it gives you the option, and this is what we talk about with a lot of these artifacts, of changing up the strategy for a character, right? Because normally, thief characters, especially the ones that are targeting and just there to trade one for one with another character, they go in, they do their job, and they get taken out very quickly afterwards, right? Because they're such a glass cannon, but with a lot of high danger. They get targeted out easily. The stealth, however, allows them to keep doing their job and enables some of those very dangerous S1s that a lot of those thieves have after they blow out with their ultimate. That's why we love it on Green Sid. That's why we love it on
Kisei too. Extend the stealth.
Yeah, extend the stealth. And we love it on Last Piece Corinne as another added layer of security for her stealth bonus as well, enabling her to get the kill and then, possibly try to hide back again, because that S1 damage is so debilitating, and only becomes more debilitating once she gets that increased up to 40% attack after the kill, which is crazy. Just crazy, right?
All right, moving on to our next tier, meta on 2 units. The first one, alphabetically, is actually, I think, the one that I argued should be in 3+, but a lot of people, when I surveyed them, including Divine, didn't necessarily, I think, agree with me on this one. So that's Abyssal Crown.
I actually agreed with you on this one. It was everyone else. I was like, listen, I will slap this on a Politis. I will slap this on a Sage Ball. I will slap this on a Solitaria. And that's what Abyssal Crown is really for, right? It's the artifact for
control mages. It's the control mage artifact, in my opinion.
It's the control mage artifact. I would also argue it is the random low chaos artifact, right? I think there's not a lot of... I'm not trying to throw Epic 7 down a bus here, right? But there's a lot of good artifacts, and then there's a lot of fun artifacts, right? Yeah. I think Arnell is a great example. We'll get to that later. Arnell's a fun artifact. It's a win more artifact. I think Abyssal Crown is kind of the artifact that goes for mental damage more than anything else. Yes. Essentially. I
100% agree with that, actually.
I think it does. It's like there's a bar of how much HP your characters have left, and then there's a bar of how much your opponent can take before their mouse just starts.
It deletes their sanity gauge.
Top right.
It's sanity, yeah. Before we got to a point where there was so many extra turn and ignores effect resistant soul burns, really only Spectre Tenebria used Tehagel's Ancient Book back in the day. Back when Basar was like the best character in the game, but he was like the best opener way back in the day, like in Season 1, Season 2. Abyssal Crown was that artifact. Like, it was the best artifact because, like Divine said, if you press S3 on Basar and you get like 3 or 4 stuns, like, the mental damage is so high, people will just top right, like, immediately. It's just this artifact that has this explosive potential that just allows you to just, like, auto-win games. Like, right now, Politis is the main user of this, I feel like, for a lot of turn 2 players in PvP. I personally play it on Solitaria of the Snow and Sage Ball and Saison, but that is not necessarily the meta build. Sage Ball is usually used on, like, Bastion, and a lot of people like Fairy Tail for a Nightmare on Solitaria, but again, this is just that high roll mental damage artifact. I think this one is tied to Basar, actually. If I'm not mistaken. Like, that's where it is. But I don't believe Basar has a side story. So if you really want Abyssal Crown, this is definitely one to consider. This is the other one that I am considering personally beside Elbris Ritual Sword. I have to choose. Do I want Elbris Ritual Sword for a potential Breed pickup? Or do I want another Abyssal Crown so I don't have to keep moving them all around on all of my different characters?
It's one of the few artifacts I could say in the game. It's fun. It's
fun for you. Fun for you. This thing is so fun for you.
If you're leaning into control style, now I've talked about this a little bit about with Sue before. I'm in suffering. I'm in a bad place in my life right now. I didn't pick up Landy. I didn't pick up Landy. I wasn't able to get Captain Landy. So I've just decided, if I'm going to suffer, the rest of the community has to. So I'm leaning full into control, right? And so for this, for my playstyle, this is definitely a plus. The only thing I would say is to keep in mind is that some of those characters we talked about before that would like Abyssal Crown also would like some limited artifacts that aren't obviously available here. But that Solitaria of the Snow we were talking about before might also like might also like Fairy Tail for a Nightmare, and so on and so forth. So if you've got some of that, Christmas is right around the corner. Merry Christmas, everybody. Christmas is around the corner. So you'll have an option to pick up that. So just balance that in your mind if you're thinking about going for something like this.
One final thing for those of you who are PvE players, Abyssal Crown is like really good for a lot of the later Abyss strategies as well. So that does give it some extra added value. Alright, so after Abyssal Crown, we have Ancient Dragon's Legacy. This is Mort's artifact. It is pretty much only really used on Mort himself as well as Red Lilius because essentially with her rework and this artifact, it is designed to be a Lua counter. And then Mort is just primarily using it because it lowers the cooldown on his S3 and, gives him that crit hit damage buff, which is insane because he essentially gets to hit you with S1, get his crit hit resist up, get a speed buff, and then get a crit hit damage buff, which is a lot of value off of just a basic attack.
It helps Mort become God. It helps him ascend to his rightful place in the meta, and I'm glad he's embracing it. I'm hoping more and more people can use Mort for that. But you also have to keep in mind, just like Mort, just like the dragon, as you can see in the artifacts card art, actually, you're going to need to be hoarding just as much gold because this is one of those, as we like to call them, whale artifacts, where it has a percent. Part of it, as you said before, the skill decrease cooldown part is not locked behind a percentage, right? You don't have to get max limit break copies to bring it from its initial 50% up to 100%. But obviously, for the crit hit damage that Mort wants, and Lilius is going to want if you're pairing her with Asenia and you're doing some kind of strat for maximum damage on her S3, because it does borrow the attack of one of your other units. If you want to play into that strategy, you are going to have to dump more copies into it. And so that's something to be aware of. It's not an artifact you get the full value of just because you pulled one copy of it. So if you're topping yourself off, going from 27 to a plus 30, maybe this is something to consider as one of those candidates. But otherwise, keep that caveat in mind, right?
Yeah, it's just it's a good artifact. It went from being unplayable to what I thought would be niche, and it surprisingly is pretty good. Next up, we have Black Hand of the Goddess. This thing is basically just a stat stick for any damage-based mage. We have it on meta on 2 units, but like it actually escapes me off the top of my head. Like I know top model Luluka is one of the ones that really wants this alongside a Dignus Orb, but I'm like struggling to think off the top of my head who the other possible units are. What?
Comeric himself, since you're trying to get all that.
Yeah, Comeric is definitely one that can use it. This is like, it's definitely the burst mages, like the aggressive burst mages thing. I believe you could technically also use this on Sylvan Sage Vivian, just because of her, it's just stats. Like I said, it is literally the stat stick artifact. If you don't really have extra books laying around, or your character's not particularly good on book, Black Hand of the Goddess is definitely one of those ones that can be something for you. It's kind of like Wind Rider in that it just gives you a bunch of stats. It just doesn't give you more stats like if you had gotten a kill with Wind Rider. It's like Wind Rider Light for your mages, your burst mages.
Yeah, in that sense, obviously this does have to compete with a 4-star artifact named Taga Hell's Book, right?
Yeah.
Which is weird, but it is certainly vying for that spot, because a lot of those opening mages we were talking about before obviously would also like book. Sylvan Sage Vivian is very soul dependent. Not a bad idea to supercharge her to make sure she can get those S1s consistently without draining the resources of the rest of the team. And if I listed every mage that wanted book here, this video would double in length. So let's quietly move on and get out of it and just say this is very much a usable artifact on some mages. But once again, I do have to mention, like I just did with our last artifact, kind of a whale RD. 12% crit chance, nice, but when you get up to 24, that's when you really can lower the stats in some aspects to massively boost either your speed or your base attack.
It's funny you say that, because I remember Kenny, if anyone of you guys know the streamer Kenny, he is the one that famously put this artifact on the map, and he is a massive whale. So yeah, definitely whale artifact. If it's not obvious, this is tied to Comeric. Moving on is Celestine. This essentially gives you bonus healing on your Soul Weaver's basic attack. It is most famously, I feel like, used on Sharoon right now because she does a lot of valuable things with her S1. Has usually is a counter set user, and also is fairly good on Inos 2.0 because she lacks healing outside of her S3. So this is a way to help supplement the healing on that character. Very good for her not only in PvP but PvE as well. There are definitely some PvE applications for this one.
Yeah, Sue, remind me, if Shuna soul burns the S1, does this artifact proc twice?
I believe it does. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that, because I've had bad experiences with Shuna's soul burn because it counts as an extra attack, and I always forget that, and then I end up dying to Lionheart Sermia as a result. So that's a nature feels bad. So yeah, I don't usually use Shuna's soul burn because I'm traumatized from dying to I am the victor.
Well, regardless, is this another floater? Because I see
this actually is a floater. It didn't used to be a floater. It used to be tied to DN, and then for some reason, when they introduced custom group summons, they gave her a new artifact, Unfading Memories, which is a limited. So Celestine it was DN's original artifact that was rated up on her banner, and for some reason we've just kind of moved off that.
Pat, I'm on the attack with this artifact, and I just can't take the fact that this artifact indeed is a limited artifact that has DN's face planted right on it, but it's not DN's artifact anymore, which also means it's also not limited. It's now in the normal pool. It's such a weird artifact. I almost feel like I want to pick it up out of some mix of pity and also like the collector's attitude of like, where is this thing? Where did it come from? It has a richer story than Epic 7 has sometimes, in fact, a story. But, it's a very weird artifact to place. I don't think you'd be misplaced to miss it, but I also don't think it doesn't have a place amongst the artifacts that you could pick up. Definitely a solid pickup, and with the amount of Soul Weavers we see in play today, especially with the meta getting a little bit slower and slower, I don't think you'd be remiss to get it.
Yeah, there's just a lot of quality Soul Weaver artifacts right now. So like Divine said, I don't think you're missing too much if you don't have it. It is good though. Like I said, Inos I think is like the primary one, like Inos and Sharoon. If you like those characters, if you really want to play those characters, I think this is one that you could consider picking up. Next up is Holy Sacrifice. This is absolutely, as you call, a whale artifact. This one essentially makes it so that when a knight dies, there is a percentage chance based on the artifact level for them to come back to life.
Resurrection!
Yeah, resurrection, the old Gil. Yeah.
There was, actually, I know TJ Combo is a good example of it. Can you think of other fighting game characters that like die and then come back? Because that's what Holy Sack always reminds me of when it procs.
Oh man. We forgot the most famous one. What's wrong with us? I can't control it.
Oh yeah, Dark
Phoenix Rises.
I don't know. I like TJ combo because it makes no sense why he comes back up. He's just like, I ain't done yet. Get me back in there. Like,
he's just angry, right? Like one is like world-ending entity, one is like universe-ending entity. One guy's just like, I'm just an angry mofo, bro.
The angriest black guy on the corner, like, don't count me out. Stop the count! Stop the count!
So yeah, this one is most used on Unbound Knight ROL nowadays. So if you don't want to play Adamant Shield, this is definitely another alternative. Helag Lance is another one on ROL. So you have some options. Holy Sack is the most popular one we're seeing coming out of the World Championship, and then your boy Troublemaker.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. The TJ combo, the Troublemaker.
Yeah, Troublemaker Crozet is also another one for anti-cleave. This gives you a second life at having his damage share protect a specific carry. So if you play either of those characters, which you probably do because ROL is pretty much Everish, one of the most played characters of the game, then Holy Sack is definitely one to consider. It's a bit hard to recommend it if you don't already have it because I think it's, 75% chance at plus 15?
50% chance. On at 0, 75% chance at 15, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a bit rough. This one kind of like skyrockets in value if you have it at plus 27. If you already have a 27 Holy Sacrifice, getting this one is like to plus 30 is a pretty big deal because then it's guaranteed to proc every single time. So do note, if this is one that you're thinking about, or if we're talking about this, check and see if you have a 27 Holy Sacrifice, because if you do, definitely pay extra special attention and give this one some very serious consideration because it kind of power spikes at that point.
Yeah, and also you can also see some use of it on Blue Crow as well if you
yeah, it's
really
cheeky. Want. Yeah, cheeky on like Yolha and Blue Crow for like Guild War defense. Definitely not meta, but it's something you could use to surprise people from time to time.
Yeah, speaking of surprises, nothing surprises me like somebody furiously jumping up the CR bar. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your family's secret art there, Pat?
Yeah, secret art Storm Sword. This is Celine's artifact. It gives you an attack buff and a combat readiness buff whenever someone uses a non-attack skill on the enemy team. Famously, really good with both versions of Celine. Who would have thought the Celine artifact is good with the Celines? Basically, Green Celine gives her the attack buff so that way her S2 passive Intuition, when it triggers, Blink does a ton of extra damage. You'll have the attack buff for Thunderclap. You can basically potentially kill 2 people with it. I think without this artifact, Green Celine's really not playable. She's already kind of in like a fringe spot, and it's just kind of expected that you have this on the character. And then you have for Spirit Eye Celine, you use it so that way she could cut in front of people who might be faster than her in RTA, and then you can actually get up her immortality buff and get her whole possession stance going and kind of get the ball rolling in the matchups that you actually want her. There's other cheeky things you can do with it. Like I've seen like a Green Sid use it once or twice here to surprise people with a cleave, but that's not really like its meta use. It really is kind of on the Celines. I think having one copy does allow you to play the character, but I don't think it gets like really good until plus 24. Obviously, you want it plus 30. This is definitely like a whale artifact. It's something that I think you give some consideration to if it puts you over one of those thresholds, either plus 24 or plus 30 for the characters.
Yeah, it's really hard to place because both aspects are really valuable, right? I could definitely say for like a decent amount of situations, you could probably cut with having this at plus 15, but you need the attack buff for Green Celine. And obviously, Green Celine's one of those characters where it's just like, oh, I didn't get the proc on my Rocket Punch gauntlets. That's too bad. It's like, oh, I didn't get this. She's useless now. And I obviously, if you pick Green Celine, she's coming through, you're hinging or pinning some part of your strategy in the match on her. So you wanted it 100%, just fundamentally so. And
yeah. I remember when we talked about this, I believe in my initial impressions when this thing was reworked about like a year and something ago, I was so upset that the attack wasn't guaranteed and the CR push was like it was even. Like it should have been, you get more CR like other artifacts if you have more investment, and the attack buff was guaranteed. That way, it would actually like be usable for like the common man and not the spender or the veteran. Because again, like he said, yeah, if you're choosing green Celine, a lot of your strategy is dependent on, do we get both of these procs. Moving on, we have Sword of Summer Twilight. This is Vildred's artifact. It gives, I believe, defense penetration whenever you use an AoE attack, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. When you use a AoE attack, going from 10% of the target's defense to 20%.
Yeah. So this one is, who would have thought, who would have guessed, good on the Vildreds. And it's also good on Ran as well. If you have a real Ran, as they call it in quotations, where like it's an actual 300 plus speed Ran that has actual critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and attack on it, then this thing is kind of a blowout because surprisingly Ran's multipliers are really nuts and he hits like a truck. So Sword of Summer Twilight lets you have that damage based Ran if you've got the gear. And then, like we said, the Vildreds, both Arbiter and Green Vildred specifically, are pretty good with this thing.
Ran is such a character sitting there where you just gate kept in real Ran specifically, where you gate kept and you're sitting there like, well, welcome to RTA. How fast are you? I'm 300 speed. Yeah, in revenge set. Oh, right this way, sir. Right this way, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. Dude, there's somebody that was like that. Somebody had the 300 speed, like, real Ran, and I was like, that's nothing. Like, it's revenge set. I was like, like, what is the gear quality on that? Like,
what are we doing here, sir? What are we doing here?
Yeah, that's, like, ridiculous. Even though I mentioned both Vildred's, Arbiter's not really meta, which is why this is in meta on 2, because Green Vildred is a necessary speed imprint at top level for speed contesting, and then obviously Ran is a meta character, so...
Ran does run through. You get the combat readiness push up for all allies by 10%. That's nothing to snuff at, right? But certainly at the end of the day, Ran is weirdly in a place, I think, comparable to C. Lilius, where he has so many good artifacts, and those artifacts fundamentally change the way he's being played and the strategy he's implementing. Yeah. And so this is a thing, right? This is a moment to sit there, put the thinking cap on, get your map from Dora the Explorer, really unchart your future as a player in RTA, and really think about what am I doing here? Looking at this pretty faced, dolly-eyed mess. Do I want Vildred's artifact?
So I would say Sword of Summer Twilight is the one you want to pick up if you can envision yourself, or you see yourself as a cleaver, right? If you're a cleaver, this is one to pick up. I think for everybody else, we can kind of pass on this one.
Look at Vildred, though. He's sitting there like, he's thinking I might go out tonight getting all pretty and dolly-eyed. To get high in the moonlight.
All right, next up we have Unseen Observer. This is Flan's artifact. And wouldn't you guess it, it's really good on Flan, but it also has some usage on Astromancer Elena. I've never played Astromancer, but everyone assures me...
Nobody here has.
Yeah.
Nobody here. Nobody in the video either.
Yeah,
I doubt it. If you leave a comment saying Astromancer Elena is fundamental to my strategy with the recent pickup of ML Landy, I don't believe. I'm just gonna fundamentally say I don't believe.
Yeah, I've been assured by a couple of people Unseen Observer is really good on Astromancer, but like, let's be real here, this is primary for Flan, and just like what we talked about with Sword of Summer Twilight, you kind of already know if you're using this thing. Like, you're a Flan enthusiast, you like her design, you envision yourself as a cleave player. If you want to be a Flan main, you want to be that guy that plays Flan all the time, then Unseen Observer is the pickup. But for pretty much everyone else, I think this one's kind of a skip. Like, it gives souls, that's great, but yeah, again, it's literally just for Flan. And then, like I said, the people tell me out there Astromancer uses this thing, but like Divine said, no one actually plays Astromancer. Like, they're lying.
Do these people have names? Have you seen them? Have you been taking your pills again, Pat? Have you remembered to take them? Okay, just check it.
I did. Okay. I did take my medicine today.
I don't know who these people are. I've never met them. They're figments of the imagination. The only thing I should be using my imagination on is, as you said before, just imagining Flan. Just that's where my imagination goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flan, pretty hot looking character, really good looking, but personality's rotten. Sorry, guys.
hey, listen. I can fix it.
You can fix it. All right, moving on to meta on one unit. So these are obviously characters or artifacts that have exactly like one good use case. It's a really strong use case, which is why it's not under niche or trash. So these ones are still worth picking up for a very specific character. So if you like the character we mentioned, then it might be worth it to pick it up for you. First up is a Little Queen's Huge Crown. This is primarily played on Arunca. It is tied to Blue Chloe and her banner. You just get bonus damage against enemies if they have barriers. Oh, look, Arunca's whole kit is about destroying things with barriers, so...
240% get in there, fuck them up.
Yeah, there's not really much else to say. If you play Arunca, you need a Little Queen's Huge Crown, or having a better one, getting an extra copy to invest it into her, so that way you can prove to the world that you like Arunca more than Redos. Yeah.
This actually might also be my pickup, because I think I'm going with Arunca. I don't have Arunca, and I don't have Little Queen's Huge Crown, so I'm like, it just seems to be a perfect pairing.
If you watch the RGB Selector, because I know there are a lot of you guys out there that were like, I'm taking Arunca. A lot of you guys expressed that you were taking Arunca. This is probably the artifact to pick up if you are an Arunca enjoyer.
Listen, this is your chance to prove it, boys. If you said you were going to pick up Arunca, you got to get her the Gucci bag as well. You got to get her the Little Queen's Huge Crown. You can't bring home the queen with no kingdom to bring her to, right?
Yeah.
No kingdom to bring her to, but yeah.
Next up is Auntie Alencinox's Wrath. This obviously goes with Auntie Alencia and is tied to Alencia's banner. It's just the most rock solid thing you can play on Alencia. Like there's some other stuff you could consider playing, right? Like the Lethe artifact could be decent on her. But I feel like it's really good on her, but like that's a premium artifact, and a lot of characters I think are vying for that. Like Shu in particular, Lethe herself, Apocalypse Ravi. So there's a lot of like high value characters that are competing for that. And like the only other like really good option I could think of off the top of my head for Auntie Alencia over her artifact here, Wrath, is like Full Metal Automail, and that's also a limited. Like if you're playing Alencia, like Alencinox's Wrath really like is that option. Like it is just the rock solid, always going to be there, always going to provide like a consistent level of performance for that character.
Yeah, I don't have too much else to say. Sometimes Jammed is just an artifact that gives crit chance if you're in a PvE need of just like fix that stat a little bit. But yeah, obviously Granny gets it herself and she enjoys it. Also a little present. And I'll also say I really do like actually the art on it.
Yeah. I mean, I just love everything about Alencia. I think Alencia is just one of the best characters Epic 7 has. I think her design is super unique compared to a lot of other gachas in the space. Her gameplay is very fair but powerful. And narratively, she's one of the best written characters. Like, just overall, like, I don't have anything bad to say about Alencinox, or Auntie Alencia, as I call her. Next up is Alexa's Basket.
You hear that?
Yeah, I don't actually know who this is.
Wait, hold, Sue. What is that sound? Can you hear it?
Is it the approaching?
Can you hear the approaching ruin?
Yeah, so Alexa's Basket, after its initial rework, was famously like the best artifact for Thief in the game because it gives greater attack buff at a 40% rate, which when Arbiter Vildred was the best character in the game, just allowed you to just win the game outright 40% of the time. You just destroy your opponent. And for a while, it was like the best option on Blue Kisei and a number of other characters in the game. But since Wind Rider got reworked, and Arbiter just hasn't been that good, and then we have things like Sword of Summer Twilight for Vildred, most of the users that wanted Alexa's Basket kind of just pivoted to like reworked or buffed options that are just better for them nowadays. Alexa's Basket really only sees play, I feel like, on Tempest Cern now, who's making a huge resurgence in the World Championship. So I think you're taking Alexa's Basket if you are somebody who wants to play Tempest Cern or you're looking to build a Tempest Cern. But you do have to be careful because, as far as I know, I don't think this is tied to any banner anymore. It used to be tied to somebody. I think it was Vildred originally, and then they gave him his sword, so this is gone from that now. And it's also a whale artifact, so like you're going to need a lot of copies of this, I think, to get max value out.
Max, just to get to that 40%. And yeah, as we said before, this video is obviously aimed at newer players a little bit coming in for the anniversary. So just to clarify, make things clear, greater attack, Gab, as we're talking about, also known as greater ass beating, It's an ancient martial arts technique consisting in the manipulation of universal probabilities to really force your opponent into surrendering the win 40% of the time. The inventor of this advanced jujitsu, also known as Arby McFirstpick, is universally acclaimed and has recently passed his throne off to the well-known Tempest Get Fucked. So really, that's where we see this artifact getting played. That's where we see it getting most of its use. And if you just want to troll, once again, boys, I won't say anything. Okay, you just want to fuck around and have some people find out. This is the artifact to get it done.
Thank you, Tristan, for the copy paste. He definitely put you up to that. Oh.
I do the community's bidding. That's all I do, okay? That's fundamentally my purpose here.
All right, next up is Bloody Rose. This one is tied to Melissa. This one is... Yeah, who? That character that disappeared after she quote-unquote got
I think she's a buff.
Yeah, I think this character got quote-unquote buffed and then apparently just disappeared. Yeah, so you're using Bloody Rose for one character and one character only, and only one of those builds. You are playing this for a high effectiveness Zeo. That is it. If you play a damage Zeo or you don't have Zeo, there's not really a reason to pick this thing up.
We can move on.
That's it. Next up is Circus Fantasia. This is also for one character and one character only. This one is tied to Mui. This is for Conqueror Lilius. Like, a lot of people consider this the most reliable option for Conqueror Lilius in the game. She does, however, have a lot of other options. Music Box, Champions Trophy, which is limited, and the new hotness coming out of the 2023 World Championship is Proof of Valor on Conqueror Lilius. So I think the value on this one is pretty low. The traditional Conqueror plays Fantasia, but like these new age Conquerors I feel like are moving away from it, so I don't think it has as much value as it used to.
Your traditional trad wife, Conqueror Lilius, is definitely moved on. She's basically the Balenciaga waifu of E7. She's got new clothes. She's wearing Gucci, Prada, all this stuff, all these artifacts, showered with so many choices because she's just that girl. She walks the walk on the runway, and she talks the talk when she Dami Mommies half of the cast. She can do whatever she wants because she's that much of a bad bitch. And Circus Fantasia is just one of her thralls. One of her many thralls. I wouldn't suggest it. But if it's your choice for your girl, honey, I can't stop you.
Speaking of new kicks for Conqueror, did you see the swimsuit Conqueror Lilius that they included in the art pack for the anniversary? If you guys haven't checked it out, I'll put it up on screen now for you.
I saw it on some illicit boards. Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. Moving on, we have Doctor's Bag. This one is tied to Green Ray. As far as I'm aware, this one, who? That character that's only used for Jew Leave Council. This one is pretty much only played on Moon Bunny Dominiel, as far as I'm aware of, which isn't particularly a very strong unit. Like, some people do use her because there is a lot of extra turns in the format. Obviously, Lionheart Sirmian takes an extra turn. I've seen people use her kind of like, oh, my opponent has Conqueror Lilius and also Lionheart. Let me take Moon Bunny Dominiel as kind of like a general use support. But aside from that, like, there's not really anybody that uses Doctor's Bag. Like, I've seen like Blue Elena, but like she's kind of really niche, and only like specialists really play her, I feel like. So for the most part, it's just Moon Bunny Dominiel.
This obviously it can only be activated once every 3 turns.
Yeah,
I think this artifact was buffed too. Did it only used to be like it could only happen 3 times a match?
Yeah, it only used to be it could happen 3 times a match or something like that. And it was also a different effect. Like, they buffed it, like reworked it, I should say. It's better, but nobody's really taking advantage of it, right? It's like literally just Moon Bunny.
It's in a feeding frenzy. It's in a pool of like 30 serial killers. The Soul Weaver artifacts.
Yeah, Soul Weavers are just broken. Their artifacts are broken. Like we're in like a Soul Weaver renaissance. In all honesty, like there's like 10 good Soul Weavers in PvP right now that are all like meta, and I'd say like 2/3 of their artifact pool is like, yeah, that's good. Like if you told me like, oh, I play DN with like Unfading Memories, I'd be like, that's good. Oh, I play it with Rod. That's good. Oh, I play it with Guardian Ice
Maga,
Crystals. That's good.
Magaharas.
Yeah, I play it on Tome. That's good. Like, we're just at a point where Soul Weaver artifacts are just, like, generically across the board some of the best in the game. So, like, you need, like, somebody like Moon Bunny who, like, really needs the cleanse to make sure she does her job. Otherwise, like, why are we playing this thing? Water's Origin also. That's another one that, like, I wouldn't fault you for playing on almost every single Soul Weaver. So, yeah, again, it's just a victim of there's just too many good alternatives right now. Speaking of good alternatives, Double-Edged Decrescent is next. This one is tied to Urvalin. This one is kind of like Shepherd of the Hollow, but like nobody's really choosing this over Shepherd besides like Charon. Charon's the only one that like really wants that counter to kind of min-max his anti-cleave potential. But otherwise, like Remnant Violet, like this feels like a more cope option when you could just take the bonus damage from Shepherd. Same thing with Savior Auden. It just feels like, why would I not just want like the attack buff from Moonlight Dreamblade or just the damage overall from Shepherd, right?
Or blow up a dark unit, AOR.
Yeah, I've seen people play Double-Edged Decrescent on Closure Charles, by the way, which that's really funny. But again, I feel like Double-Edged Decrescent just isn't there. Like, it's just not as consistent as just taking Shepherd, unless you're just trying to play Charon. In which case, that I feel like has its own set of challenges because a lot of Cleave teams play at least one blue unit, and he's just screwed against any team, I feel like, with one or more blue units on it. Moving on, we have Durandal. This one is, I think, it used to be tied to Red Ken. I think currently Durandal is not tied to anybody.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't know who that artifact.
Yeah, this used to be on Red Ken before they gave him Samsara Prayer Beads. Yeah, this one is definitely, I feel like, you know, one of those ones you'd consider if you are like looking for that floater, that one that doesn't have a side story. Durandal's definitely one of those. It is famously only really used on Dark Corvus right now, who is a really strong Guild War character and also one of the stronger pocket picks to have in World Arena. Like, if you're trying to play Dark Corvus at all, if you have him, this is the optimal pickup for him. That's kind of pretty much it. Like, if you're a Dark Corvus enthusiast, you're going to be taking Durandal if you really want to bring out that character.
Once again, that covers it. Dark Corvus, Guild War monster extraordinaire, sometimes the deadliest fifth pick in the world when you're looking at a comp and you're like, I don't think any of this is what I'm afraid of. Plus, you got too much AoE. But yeah, other than that, we got to move on to Dux Noctis, which I'm sure we're all ready and happy to have the math argument once again of Dux Noctis versus Portrait of the Saviors versus whatchamacallit, Symbol of Unity in the most unique and niche circumstance of, I mean, it's Commander Pavel. He's going to kill anything.
Yeah, Dux Noctis is only really played on Commander Pavel and is used, or it comes from Pavel's banner. Dux Noctis is only something I think you pick up if you really want to min-max your Commander Pavel, and you already have a couple copies of Dux Noctis, because this thing doesn't really, I think, outscale Portrait or Symbol until like plus 24, right? Like, I think that's like the break point. It's got to be plus 24, and even then it's comparable. It really only starts to exceed at plus 27 or like plus 30, right? That's kind of it. Like, you need this is a whale artifact. This is one you take if you have most of the artifacts in the game and you're just looking to min-max that one specific character.
As I said before, Commander Pavel, the highlight of it. I don't even use it on Commander Pavel. I have it Dux Noctis. I prefer MISHAs.
Yeah.
There you go.
Next up is Goblet of Oath. Wolf Luna, aka Pera, is the banner that it's tied to, and shocker, Wolf Luna is the only real user for this thing. I think it is the best option for Pera. Yes, RNL, which we'll talk about in 2 artifacts from this, is another viable option for her. But I have actually lost a fair number of games because I procced RNL because of how it could cause her to accidentally fall out of stealth or have her cooldowns not line up properly. And that kind of really sucks. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Goblet of Oath, I believe, also gives bonus effectiveness, which Pera definitely could use because a lot of people, to get this character to a high speed, most average Joes playing the game, they don't have the ability to get high speed and high effectiveness and good bulk, so having the innate extra effectiveness is super beneficial So yeah, if you like Para, if you are taking Para with your Selector, Goblet of Oath is a really, really strong option to pick up for. Even at plus 15, I still think it does a pretty sufficient job.
Yeah, yeah. You're going to start out with 15% increased effectiveness, and then max it out. God knows. I don't know how you did it. I mean, I imagine you max out this artifact and you stared at Payra a little bit too long, and your wallet just starts to slowly disappear and it gets sucked into your PC. But if you do, you get 30% effectiveness as well. Nothing to scoff, nothing to sneeze at, but definitely, mommy does enjoy her goblet, but other options, as we said.
Yeah, also, fingers crossed, boys and girls. One of the people that's still in the World Championship is going to choose a Para skin if they win. I'm really pulling for that person because I really want an extra Para skin. I think she could really use a glow up. Nothing like wrong with her current attire. I just think that the 2D could be a bit better, and I think she would look better in a less confusing set of clothing. If not that, my boy, the artist formerly known as Dam Dam for the Yulha skin. So. Mm-hmm. Moving on, Indestructible Gaiters. Apparently not, because they broke Hua Yong's legs. This one is obviously tied to Hua Yong, and it is only really used on our boy, ML Ricardo, a.k.a. Inferno Kawazu, or as you, how do you refer to it, Divine?
Cookout Kawazu. Everybody's invited to the cookout when he's here.
Yeah. So if you are trying to play Inferno Kawazu, this is pretty much the best option for you because it gives you a chance at an extra burn stack, which is obviously super good with his S3. So it makes it absolutely just like destroy anything. Do note, by the way, this is like a little side note if you're not aware. I did mention it, I believe, in how to play Inferno Kawazu. The burn from Indestructible Gaiters is affected by effectiveness, so you might not actually be able to kill certain high resistance characters, specifically Soul Weavers, with this thing. Just a little tidbit for you guys to be aware of, but Inferno Kawazu, definitely a character I think everybody should actually have built. He's really good on Guild War offense, and in this post-Navy Captain Landy world, he's one of the best counter picks to that character as well. So if you have Kawazu waiting around and you're losing to Landy, you should build them up, get a copy of Indestructible Gaiters, and start winning some games.
Yeah, be a winner. Be a winner, everybody.
Next up is Rhianna and Luciella, no relation to the singer. This is commonly abbreviated as R and L. I believe this is tied to Haste's banner, Red Haste. R and L, obviously a really powerful secret art known as Ran Never Loses. Basically, Ran is a character that has the ability to take an extra turn on his S2, which gives him 2 chances at proccing Rhianna and Luciella, and that could just win the game because he could just go S2, I procced R and L, S3, I defense break the team, I procced R and L again, and then I just get 2 S1s, more commonly known as 3-2-1-1, I believe is the abbreviation for having that happen. And you're so far ahead if that actually happens that you just kind of just win the game. Like, this is the high roll artifact on Ran. It is the most commonly played one on Ran because if it procs once, you're in a good spot. If it procs twice, you're pretty much just winning. Hence the fan name Ran Never Loses.
Ran Never Loses. And as a nice aside, it does come with the best card art in the game, hands down. And I will say
Anatomical Nightmare. No, it's terrible.
Hey, listen. If you just turn your brain off, right? Just shut down some of those core faculties of your mind. You can truly appreciate all that R&L has to offer.
No, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I thought, coming from FGO, I thought Minamoto no Raiko was like the worst anatomy I had ever seen in my life in a drawing. And then I saw R&L and I was like, no, that's the worst anatomy I've ever seen in a drawing. Next up, we have Shimadra Staff. I believe this one is tied to Destina. This one gives bonus healing potency for your Soul Weaver and also gives bonus effect resistance to your entire team. Obviously, this synergizes incredibly well with Maid Chloe, who heals your whole team and gives bonus effect resistance to your entire team, allowing you to basically double up on her passive skill, and it's just super, super good for her. If you're a turn 2 player, and you really like playing Maid Chloe in World Arena and like RTA, or I'm not, well, RTA, no, I'm saying Guild War offense, brain fart, then yeah, this is definitely, I think, the pickup for you. Maid enthusiasts definitely want this thing.
Maid is here, and that's all you're really going to be using it for. It's going to buff up the team's effect resistance, as we said, and that's really important when you're running those comps where you're trying to get those numbers as high as possible. You're laying in probably an Aria also in the back line with your Bastion of Bastion as well, and this just puts that team composition together. So if you're wanting to run that kind of strategy, this is the kind of final element that pushes you above and beyond in that aspect. And speaking of certain strategies, our next artifact kind of enables one of those. Snow Crystal. Let's talk about the rampancy of anti-crit going well, shall we, Sue?
Yeah, this is obviously tied to Shu's banner. In the past, it was primarily played on Shu herself, but with the advent of Lethe, our Prayer of Solitude is probably the better option. Nowadays, Snow Crystal, I believe, is used on Holiday Euphine for slower characters to kind of, cheese out wins against aggressive teams because it's a more consistent CR push than playing Guide to a Decision. But otherwise, this is kind of like the Warriors version of Moonlight Dreamblade, right? It's kind of like how that was the dodge. This is kind of the anti-crit, and like Divine said, it kind of lends itself to this anti-crit meta that we're kind of in, because Landy is got the anti-crit, and then we got Sanya, and then you obviously have Landy gives the anti-crit buff to everybody, which is kind of, ironically enough, bringing DN kind of back into the meta, because these characters like really want to lean into the anti-crit. So if that's a strategy you're trying to employ, I think Snow Crystal could work on a couple of bruisers as kind of like a surprise choice tech.
We can't forget, also works well into AoE, because once you do avoid a crit, you do also get that push up thanks to the artifact. So it allows you to cut in some instances and surprise opponents, get out those valuable S3s, just like Shu has with even more anti-crit on top of what this artifact provides. So it can definitely work into some strategies alongside those.
All right, next up, we have one of my personal favorite artifacts, and also, unfortunately, one of the whaliest artifacts. Like, this is one of those ones where you're gonna want to have max copies of it. It's Spear of a New Dawn, which is tied to Sanya, and as you can guess, it goes on Sanya. If you are taking Sanya from your Selector, and you don't have Spear of a New Dawn, you're pretty much, like, required to get Spear of a New Dawn. The character just doesn't function without Spear of a New Dawn. There's not really like any other alternative besides Holy Sacrifice, and I feel like that is just so much worse than playing Spear of a New Dawn. Even at plus 15, Spear is usable, but this is definitely one of those ones where like you would want to actually get this to plus 30 as fast as possible. I'm not going to name names, but I do know people, friends of mine, that have bottled Spear of a New Dawn just to get it to plus 30 as fast as possible, because they really like playing Sanya, because she's one of the strongest turn 2 / anti-aggressive characters currently that we have in Epic 7.
I'll admit there was a dark period in my history where I was using Rocket Punch Gauntlets on Senya. Thankfully, ever since we got the stimulus check, I've been able to claw myself out of that place. But definitely Premier for Senya. Senya, still I'd say arguably a good unit, especially in RTA when you're going to be making your climb, since the season is ending in about 2 weeks or so. So if you do want to get a strategy with Senya up and running as soon as possible, pair her with this artifact, get it to plus 15, and just pray.
Yep.
So all we've been doing.
Also, this thing, Spear of a New Dawn, it has some niche applications on Red Charlotte. I've used it on that to some great success. So it's not entirely just for Sanya, but let's be real here. Sanya is like the only real user for this thing. Next up is Stella Harpa. This is tied to Elena's banner. This is only really used on Rhianna, and it's because it gives you a free win versus Archdemon Shadow, and it's also really powerful against things like Solitary of the Snow, which are two characters that Rhianna hard counters. So the worst matchup that Rhianna has that she hard counters is Archdemon Shadow, and Stella Harpa kind of negates that weakness. And then, like I said, Stella Harpa helps you out in the Solitaria matchup by helping her be like kind of a mini cleanser for your entire team.
If you're running this artifact, you're going to be well protected with your Rhianna. I'd also like to say it does come in clutch in a lot of instances in PvE. I know that if you're doing your Hell Raid, your Rhianna wants this, and your Rhianna will save you from all the nasty, toxic debuffs that are coming out.
Yeah, Julie Council is another place that Rhianna is commonly used in PvE, and Stella Harpa is really good on her for that as well. It'll save your team from a lot of damage, potentially.
Yeah, so if you're struggling with those aspects, obviously, you could do.
Yeah. Moving from one artifact that you'd play on a Rekos character, we'll move on to a Rekos artifact that you play on a non-Rekos character, which is Spirit's Breath, which is tied to Blue Lulica. This one is used on Angel of Light Angelica if you choose not to play her on either Proof of Valor, because it's on another character, or Tagahel's Ancient Book, because anytime she procs her S2, you could potentially get Spirit's Breath to just get more value. Same thing with S3, you could just get more value. It just makes AOL generally incredibly annoying if you high roll. Makes it frustrating as all hell for your opponent to play the actual game against her.
You don't even need the high roll if you are able to get it maxed out to get to 100% effectiveness.
Yeah. This thing actually, it has the nickname Whale's Breath is what a lot of people refer to it as, because famously when it came out, people wailed for it to get their auxiliary lots to have this thing at plus 30, so that way they would always have infinite S2 spam. So that's kind of where it's at. Aux lots, obviously, though, not really meta anywhere anymore.
Yeah, but having the utility to do so in PvE, obviously, is going to help you out through a lot of Abyss floors where you're kind of lot cheesing your way through. AOL is a good, predominantly annoying user, and I know if you try your best, you can be as annoying as possible in RTA. God knows I've done so. And now we get to the niche artifact list. Stealing the thunder from Pat a little bit, I'll tell you that the niche artifacts here, just as their name describes, they're not even the predominant use for the character. They'd probably be being put on. There's probably more quote-unquote meta picks for those characters. These are alternative picks to some characters. That's what we're calling niche here. And we've got a couple of artifacts here, and we're starting off first with Air to Surface Missile MISHA. I talked a little bit about this earlier when I said I personally run this on my Commander Pavel, but outside of that, this isn't really an artifact that we see too much use. It's a stat stick in a lot of ways, and it has the increased hit chance, which makes it really weird because that increased hit chance at max level goes up to 20, right? Which puts it comparable to Symbol of Unity, but there's not too many Rangers that were like, yo, go get that Rylet, right? That's not really the purpose in all instances.
Yeah, MISHA was famously used by Brother Stone in the first World Championship, I believe, on Briarwitch Assaria as an anti-dodge thing. And so sometimes you'll see Briarwitch on MISHA, but it's definitely not the meta pick on her. It's kind of like I don't have enough Guiding Lights, so this will work, I guess, option.
Yeah, Guiding Light, once again, taking over as dominance here.
Yeah. If it's not obvious, this is tied to Bomb Model Kana, by the way.
Yeah, which is also a unit you don't want to roll for because you get her through the connections as well. So I guess maybe you could see picking up the artifact that way. But once again, so niche, just pray you get it with one of your 110 artifact summons as a bonus on top. And speaking of a bonus on top, we've got Border Coin. I know this artifact belongs to one of your favorite characters, Sue, as we talked about earlier. This is primarily seen, and it's actually, once again, maybe you have to call me the niche king at this point. This is really on my Conqueror Lilius. It's able to stack up with her multiple non-attack skills to get her to speed herself up very quickly. And she's already a very fast character, obviously an opener, that wants that increased speed that can stack multiple times up. So it's 10% initially when it is maxed out, which means 30% if you do cycle all the way back up to your S2 a third time. And for me, it really enables a lot of utility in shutting down and basically converting my Conqueror Lilius from an opener to a debuffer that assists in pulling the characters I need and also keeping things like the A Ravi locked down, but very much a niche use. You're not even really using the attack portion, the attack benefit of it. So just like we talked about with MISHA, I don't know where we're going to be really using the hit chance. Just like for Border Coin, I don't know where we're going to be using this increased attack, which does, of course, land it in the niche category.
Yeah, it's just Conqueror for players that don't have the best gear, and then PvE for Sirmia, which that's kind of it. And Sirmia has other options that are comparable. I think Border Coin is the best option for Sirmia for expeditions, but Cruel Mischief is the best option for obviously Hall of Trials, and then Abyss has some comparable or better options as well. So it's really niche. Next up, we have Crimson Moon of Nightmares. This one is tied to Red Tenebria, which, correct me if I'm wrong, means that it's not able to be selected through the story summon. This one just gives basically extra dual attack chance. No one really plays this outside of like Unity, Spectre, Tenebria. I assume if Tagahel's Ancient Book ever gets nerfed or reworked in any meaningful way, this like instantly becomes the best option on Spectre. But like it's so far beneath Book on Spectre that like, again, you have to have like really high end gear on like Unity set to really want to consider playing this actual thing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, over here. There's a cap on dual attack chance, correct?
Yes, I believe it is 30%.
I don't even think it's 30%. Give me a second to check. I think that's actually important because at max this does bring you up to 14%.
Yeah. So yeah, with Unity, you're like right there almost. You're almost like at the cap. You might actually be over the cap. I'm sure the people in the wonderful people in the comments can let us know what it is. But like again, that's like the only time you're really ever playing Crimson Moon of Nightmares. It's pretty much just on Spectre if you just don't want to play Book. Crown of Glory is next. This one is tied to Blue Tywin. This one just mitigates the damage that you take from AoE attacks, and I believe it also steals souls, if I'm not mistaken, when you get hit by an AoE attack. Famously, this one was originally used at Last Rider Crow for a time, especially after his rework. It was used for a little bit, but I think people have now kind of moved past it, moved to Arius kind of as his like default meta pick option. I think that the option that has surprised me the most this season is people play this on Mort versus Navy Captain Landy as like this really weird tech option to make it so that like I can never do any damage to the anti-crit and I can never have souls to actually guarantee a salvo. So I just don't get any real value, it feels like, out of my Landy as a result. But like other than that, I don't really think that Crown of Glory does like much of anything. It's kind of like a you know, like a cute option you could play on LRK or like Mort. But other than that, I don't really see anybody else playing this thing. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Divine?
I feel exactly the same way as you've outlined. It's a night artifact that brings, yes, some defensive qualities, but not enough to really rival a lot of the other artifacts. And once again, it's also in that weird place of you wanting to get it maxed out, and no offense, nobody's pulling for Tywin in that way.
Yeah.
Blue Tywin receiving his buff, still not in exactly a stellar place, so...
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
There. Yeah, decreasing by 20% at max rank, but starting off at 10, so 15. Yeah, it's just a hard thing to argue for. The 5 souls is nice, but...
Yeah. Next up is Etica Scepter. This one is played sometimes on Researcher Carrot in PvP. It's commonly used on like Ball and Saison in like expeditions. And we've seen recently from, I believe it's the Korea server, a lot of players using Etica Scepter on Zeo. But like that's kind of it. Like it's pretty much just one of those characters. Like it's kind of like I've got a strong S3. I'm hoping I can lean into it. And it's, you know, usable on more characters and more situations than like Spirit Spread. But like otherwise, I think this one is kind of, you're hoping to high roll, right? Like it's like RNL where we hope to high roll, where it might win us the game, but like RNL kind of does win you the game when you high roll. When you high roll with Eticas, it's like, oh yeah, dude, my Zeo got to fire off another S3 in this game. Cool.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. It's in that place where just like you're throwing yourself into the whims of fate. And I just, you know, the more and more Epic 7 goes on, we get artifacts that do something, and then we get artifacts that might do something. And when you get into things that might do something, you just want to guarantee that you get what you get. And that's pretty much the description actually of the next artifact. Manica of Control, this one tied to Says, but also increasing hit chance by 20%, increasing your critical hit chance by a flat 15%, but only on a single attack. I mean, talk about the niche of the niche, right? First of all, we've said this before, increase in the critical hit chance. It's just, I don't know where you're going to put it. I don't know where you're going to find a place for it really half of the time. and then only getting it on the single attack means that like
Yeah.
you're going to want a character with a kit that fits that, and not even Says himself is always fitting that. So
yeah, it's literally like it's like last piece Corinne, but it's like the third best option, right? Like it's like Symbol is my best option, Wind Rider is my second best option, and then like Manica is like super far down there, right? Like it's like the super distant third, maybe even fourth option, right? You're playing it because you want the hit chance. Like nobody is picking this for the critical hit chance. You are playing this because you are trying to build a character that is specifically designed to pick off an Auden or a Remnant Violet, right? That's kind of it.
If I were to be honest with you, I'd say it's the best candidate in this list so far. That's my thoughts on it. Maybe pick it up if you're a betting man and you think the rework is gonna make it crazy. That's
I think this is already the rework. That's the crazy thing. Yeah, Smilegate, bro. I need you guys to take some more time when you think through these artifact reworks. Because the thing is, like, people are just going to gravitate towards, like, the universally best thing, right? So, when you think about it, like, Manica's got to compete with Wind Rider and a lot of the other strong neutrals, right? Like, nobody's, like, out here going, like, yeah, hit chance is great, but like what ruins is the critical hit chance, right? Like if that critical hit chance was like, and then you had like, I don't know, like you got like an attack buff. Like there's a chance to get an attack buff at the start of the turn, like Tachi, right? And it gave hit chance. Oh yeah, dude, sign me up. Like that would be great. But like crit hit chance, no, I'm not playing it for that.
Especially only on single attack.
Yeah. Next up, we have Merciless Glutton. This is Euphinae's artifact, which was in the past absolutely god awful. It gave an effectiveness buff on a kill, which is like, why is that a thing? That doesn't do anything. Now it is kind of like a cross between Wind Rider for thieves as well as Sachet for rangers. It's kind of like you get extra damage on single target attacks. And if it gets a kill, you get a little CR push for your whole team. This one actually was kind of good for like a while. Like Zahak was using this for a hot minute. And when Rimuru was a lot more played, he was playing this as well. But Rimuru is not really like meta right now. I think this is still Rimuru's best option. But like Rimuru's not really meta right now.
I feel like Rimuru is in and out. I think there's enough, especially with like, you know, I've seen some of it of him being played into the Captain Landy, because obviously starting out with buffs means he gets to go wild and be a little serial killer.
Yeah, this is like, like you said, Rimuru ebbs and flows. This one also kind of ebbs and flows Merciless Glutton. It kind of like goes in and out of the format. Like right now, a lot of the stuff that's seeing play, Merciless Glutton is not like, you know, the things that people that want to use it, they're not either being played, or the ones that would play it, like Zahak, are choosing alternatives like Symbol, for example. Overall, like, Glutton, I think, out of everything in niche tier, he's probably the strongest. Like, I think that if you're going to take one in niche, this is probably the best overall one, because there are some times where it becomes meta, but, like, right now, while we're recording this video in September of 2023, it is not meta, right? But, like, who knows? Maybe, like, by November, we're in a meta where, like, warriors are dominant again and, like, Rimuru makes a resurgence or certain characters get buffed. All of a sudden, Merciless Glutton just kind of jumps up there. Just because it's not meta now doesn't make it bad. Like, this is, I think, far and away out of everything we're going to talk about here in niche, I think this is the best one. Next up, we have Rise of a Monarch. This is...
Okay.
Oh, did you want to say something more about
I was going to say about Merciless Glutton is, like, I don't discount the push-up, but it's one of those things where it's like it reaches a weird place where it's just like combat readiness push-ups are especially on a kill, are most valuable at the opening of the game. So you need somebody fast enough to either open the game or who can cut on their own. That's why we like Rimuru. But then they have to guarantee the kill, which incentivizes getting as many copies as artifact as you can, but also incentivizes that unit being a monster, a killer, right? Mm-hmm. There's just not too many warriors, I think, right now who you want to risk your strategy on. Get up there and kill them all right now.
Yeah. All right, moving on again to Rise of a Monarch, which has some of my favorite artwork, pretty much of any artifact in this entire game. In fact, I'm going to use it for the thumbnail, I'm pretty sure right now. This is tied to Red Cecilia. This basically turns your knight into, like, a mini Fallen Cecilia in that you get a barrier to the lowest health person at the end of each turn. And they buffed it so that it gives the 10% defense that a lot of Knight artifacts give. So you get a little bit more survivability out of it. This isn't really used on, like, anyone, I feel like, in PvP. Like, I've seen people try it on, like, Last Rider Crow. I don't think it's particularly good there. I think its best use is actually in Challenge Abyss. I think that's probably where it really shines brightest, because a lot of those challenges are like, we have to win in a really short amount of time, so we got to go fast. And this is like a way for us to protect our glass cannons without, like, really needing to invest in, like, Arius. Like, you can have somebody else hold this. Like a DPS knight or something. That's kind of really the only way I could think of to actually use this thing.
It's like a dream that's like a far off memory.
Yeah.
A far off memory that's like a dream. I've seen this comp again and again in my nightmares of, like, Rise of a Monarch, Last Rider Crow, with Karina and Lionheart Sirmia, and all these defense scaling units, even Amaryllis maybe on Rocket Punch. Like, I see this comp in my dreams, and then I see the value that the 10% increased defense to all allies that they get from that, but, like, I'd need thousands of dollars to even dream of making that comp. Like, nah, bro, it ain't worth it.
That's not worth it. Next one.
Truly the definition.
Yeah. Next up, we're going to be talking about Samsara Prayer Beads, which is Red Ken's artifact. This one's probably going to be surprising to some of you players that are, like, more experienced with World Arena. Samsara Prayer Beads, after the rework, was pretty good. It was being used on Dark Corvus before everyone settled into Durandal. And it was the meta pick alongside a Proof of Valor for Apocalypse Ravi, who's obviously one of the best characters in the game, one of the most played characters in the game. But, like, it was basically just a Ravi leading the charge with Samsara Prayer Beads, right? And then we got this really curvaceous character called Lethe last month, and her artifact, I don't know if you've read it, but it gives a huge amount of HP, which translates to survivability and a whole lot of damage for Apocalypse Ravi. And everyone was like, Prayer Beads? What are Prayer Beads? And then they just yeeted that shit, and we forgot it existed.
I think the real problem with this artifact, we're obviously not doing a balance discussion, just doesn't do enough, and more importantly, like, you think it was good because this would make it quote-unquote whale-friendly, but, like, pulling more copies of this artifact only reduces the damage taken. It doesn't increase how much damage you do on only single attacks, and it doesn't really do anything else. And obviously that damage reduction can be covered by Aureus or other factors. So at the end of the day, what are you pulling this for, right? If you pulled a Knight, which is only here for a 10% attack on only single attacks, on only warriors, who, as we've said multiple times before, have some of the most competitive picks nowadays.
Yeah. Sigurd Scythe, Golden Rose, right? Yeah, like, and then, like we just said, I know it's limited, but, like, Lethe's artifact, like, when are you ever playing Samsara Prayer Beads if you have Prayer of Solitude? Like, if you own Prayer of Solitude, it's just a straight up better option than playing Samsara.
I made sure to pick up 4 copies of Prayers of Solitude, and I pray every day and thank the good Lord I made that decision.
Next up, we have Spatiotemporal Fan, which is tied to Lua, who is one of the most overpowered, if not the most overpowered character in all of Epic 7. Shocker, it's only played on Lua, but it's only played as a niche choice to Guiding Light. Like, if Lua doesn't take turn 1, what makes her so strong is that she's probably in Guiding Light, so you can't mess with her before she ruins your opponent's entire game plan. If you are on Spatiotemporal Fan, you have to be confident that you have turn 1 because you don't have that protection from Guiding Light. Also, it's kind of a Giga Whale artifact. Like, you really need this thing to be maxed out to get max potency on this thing.
Yeah, as you can probably turn over and see, I am close to my last copy of Spatiotemporal Fan. And I'm excited for the gimmicks I can get up to and I can play with this. Once again, this artifact, to me, has 0 value because it's tied to Lua, who is such a garbage unit in terms of ever picking her, because you won't. Yeah. Because if your opponent is not picking her, they are banning her. They are post-banning her. And that is a nightmare on itself to even be let on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So what is the value of an artifact on a character you're never even going to get to play?
The most usage that Lua gets is like seeing her on a Guild War defense team. Like no one's ever letting you have Lua. The only time that Lua makes it through the pre-ban phase is because your opponent has first pick and they want Lua and you didn't ban it. Like that's pretty much the only time this character ever makes it through. Right? Moving on to Sphere of Inferno. This is tied to Bihu on his banner, and shocker, it's only really used on Bihu. But it's secondary, I feel like, to Guiding Light for that character.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much else to say on this. Like, Bihu,
I've never been a Bihu guy. I thought we were getting Fox Girls. They played us with the one Fox boy, and then we never got to see the rest.
Yeah, I know Red was like crying. He was like, how is this game going to have like 7 Fox Girls and only give us 1 Fox Hans Bando? It makes no sense. But yeah, as I said in the RGB5 selector video, I have very little experience with playing as Bihu. I have seen him and played against him a couple of times, and he has impressed me. I do think there's a lot of untapped potential in the character, but I struggle to see why I wouldn't want Guiding Light, and even then, the free artifact from Nadalon Monk is also really good on them, so I think Sphere of Inferno is like his 3rd best option. Moving on, we have Sword of Winter Shadow. This is Ran's artifact, and it's the niche choice on Ran, which we already talked about several that you could use. You could go full damage on Sword of Summer Twilight. You can go Rhianna and Luciella for the high roll. Sword of Winter Shadow is kind of like I want my Ran to have counterplay versus mages stacking book. That's kind of what it's there for. Like, it steals souls from your opponent when you use a non-attack skill. So it's kind of like, haha, I have turn 1 with Ran. I'm going to steal some of your souls so that way it can fuel my aggression for like a soul burn. Or it makes it so that I take away like your Spectre Tenebria combo. That's kind of what it's made for.
Yeah, that's pretty much where it falls into. You get to ran away with a couple of the enemy souls, but if I said Celelius was the queen of the ball, Ran is the king, and he just got so many dresses and artifacts that he can put himself on that it's hard to value one over the rest of them.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Like, Ran just has so many good options that like you could probably even like play like Wind Rider if I'm being real with on Ran. Like, it would still probably be pretty good for the bonus attack. But yeah, Sword of Winter Shadow is like, it's a gimmick that can definitely work at high level play, but like it doesn't happen all that often. Next up is Uberius' Tooth. This is Luna's artifact, if I'm not mistaken, or at least it used to be, and then they moved it to Draco Plate. So Draco Plate is the limit, and just like with Celestine we talked about earlier, this is like a former limited artifact that's like not limited now, that kind of like fell off of a limited banner and now just doesn't have a home. Tooth is in a weird spot because it used to be like best in class on Huayong, and then they broke her legs and now you can't really use it. And then it was like best in class on Arunca, and then they changed Arunca, and now it's Little Queen's huge crown. So like every once in a while, like Tooth becomes like the option. If there's ever a character with like a warrior with a metric ton of attack, like a Huayong or an Arunca, like if we ever get like a character that's like it can't crit but it has like 6,000 attack, that's when Uberius' Tooth is at its best. And unfortunately, right now, like, we don't have a character like that in the format. At least, like, that's not playable, that doesn't have a better option.
And then, what else am I going to say? Like, Uber's Tooth, I'll say it. It's like an NFT to me. It's like cryptocurrency. It comes in, it feels like everybody's going crazy over it, and then it disappears just as quickly. And I was like, what the hell was that? That was Uber's Tooth, right? It comes in, it's a flash in the pan, there's a gold rush for it, people are trying to pull this many or get as many copies as they can, and then it's gone just as
yeah. All right, last one in the niche category, and then we're going to do the lightning round for the trash.
I was about to say, we can start it right now. You put that in trash. I don't know why Violet Talisman is... Who is doing this?
Violet Talisman? Dude, some people play this on Speed Rylet. I'm not messing with you. Like 270, 280 speed Rylet, people play Violet Talisman. Because
are we gonna let our tier list be defined by a couple of loose escapees from the Scythe Lord? Is that what we're doing here?
All right, you know what? For you, my boy, I'll put it in trash.
Oh, no,
Violent
but,
Talisman probably is like the worst option. I feel like out of here, right? Like it's
because
only in that one thing we talked about, and I agree, it's not even that good.
If we're gonna like, let me be real, right? Double Edge Decrescent is barely hanging on to meta on one unit. It would be a niche if we didn't somewhat say it was good on Kairon, right?
Yes.
So if that artifact is there, then what am I gonna? I have to throw this one in the trash.
All right. So now, like I said, because this video has already been going on for over an hour at this point, let's lightning round our way through trash and explain it. So first up is Alabastron. I think this is only playable on Acid, and I think it's a cope build. Go ahead.
I would put it on Secret if it could be on Secret. It feels like it would be perfect for her, but it's not, and it just makes me sad. It makes me very miserable. An offer you can't refuse. I can refuse this artifact in its entirety and say that I can't figure, like, what's the point of an offer if nobody can use it, okay?
Yeah, it's not good. Like, almost every other, like, what this does, right? Like, other Ranger artifacts just do it better. Like, I struggle to think of why I would ever want to take this over, like, Guiding Light, right? Even, like, Sasha, right? Like, wouldn't Sasha just be better? Like, I just can't see a reason to ever use it. Bastion of Perlutia, this one used to be played on Troublemaker Crozet originally. Yeah.
Eaton Gang, rise up.
Yeah, Eaton, it's like Eaton, right? Like, that's it. You played on Eaton.
I have this at plus 30.
Yeah, I also have Bastion at plus 30. Like, it used to be a Troublemaker thing, and then everyone realized, wait, isn't Holy Sack just better? And so now it just doesn't see any play. Creation and Destruction is the most meme high roll artifact in the game. It's broken, but the percentage is so low that it'll never trigger in any, like, meaningful quantity. Like, if you want to truly experience the highs and lows of Epic 7, try to make Creation and Destruction work. It's pretty bad and in desperate need of a rework. Glowwings 21 is only good for summertime Assaria if you are getting cleave. Like, you have to be the one that's holding Assaria on Glowwings with Bellion on Elbris on your team, and your opponent hits you with an AoE attack, and then you will proc Glowwings and be like, haha, surprise barrier, and I win. But other than that, no, it's playable nowhere.
It's as much as the edge case is like not ruining your arrow well, and be like, haha, now you don't get to cleave me with the opposite, whatever.
Yeah, Idol's Cheer is like a cheeky thing you surprise your opponent with by like, haha, you hit my Soul Weaver, and now I have a chance to potentially cut in front of you and win the game. It used to be played on Ruel and like Blood Moon Haste, but like they're unplayable, so like who's playing this? Iron Fan, they reworked it, and it used to be a PvE staple artifact for Banshee 13, and they reworked it into an unplayable artifact. What the hell, guys? Like, what are we doing, Smilegate? Like, what the hell? Next up is Justice for All. Literally only played on Falcon or Clury, and she's not meta. She hasn't been meta for a while unless your name has mana.
I don't even remember what this does. Or I know it's on Charles, but
basically at the end of each turn you get a random buff, and Clury's the only knight fast enough to actually be able to realistically like see like 3 or 4 turns in a rapid succession to stack a bunch of
so
buffs.
it's Room Mask. It's Room Mask. Oh yeah,
it's exactly. It's an anti-crit mask, but it's all like defensive style buffs on the second slowest class overall in Epic 7. So like you can't cycle in any meaningful time fashion to get it to work.
Yeah.
Knowledge Seed, in my opinion, is the worst 5-star artifact in the game. I have no idea how Big Smo plays this and has success with it in Legend. It makes no sense to me. Like, this is on my, like, top 3 artifacts, like, that need a rework. It's trash. You have to be losing the game to actually get value out of this thing.
This is an incredibly effective artifact in that I feel like every once in a while I get hard Mandela affected and just imagine that they had to have reworked it already and that it does something else and I just forgot about it. But no, I wake up from the dream every time and it's still that artifact. Last tea time, I used to play on Researcher Karen once in a while because I thought I was cool. AoE damage up on mages. Hey, that's crazy. You have book.
That's it. You have book. That's it. You have book, right? Like again, mages just get the rawest deal because like while Soul Weavers are flush with great variety and warriors are flush with great variety, right? You look at mage and it's like, oh, it's flush with great variety, except one artifact stands so head and shoulders above every other option that it like invalidates 80 to 90% of the pool. Like, yeah, if you want to, like, I really hope that they nerf or rework book at some point because it's actually just not healthy for mages in general. because so many artifacts in the game just get shoved out by that thing's sheer existence.
Yeah, and the next up we have Noble Oath, which is just about as relevant as Bask himself on the artifact. Okay, after that we've got Pure White Trust, the worst named artifact in the game.
Yeah, Pure White Trust. Yeah, so yeah, just real quick, Noble Oath is only played on F Maya. That's it. Pure White Trust is a bad version of Border Coin. Scroll of Shadows actually is an insane artifact on Aria, which is where you can use it. Except only like one person in the world, KHM, can actually use this thing, because the only way you're playing this on Aria and finding success is if it's maxed out and your Aria is like 450 gear score and doesn't need to actually hold some kind of effect resistance artifact. Like,
yeah, I figure that none of you have the gear to use it.
Yeah, nobody does. Like, it's literally like only the top, like not even like legend player, like the upper third of legend are the only people that can really take advantage of Scroll of Shadows, which is why it's trash, because it's like nobody can play this character and actually meaningfully use it. Sphere of Sadism is Yulha's. I think it's garbage. Crest, my friend, thinks it has some use cases. No, just play Arius. It's better. Like, there's literally, it's just Yulha, and you would rather just play Arius. Sword of Autumn Eclipse is a Runkas. It's only good on Kitty Clarissa for Expedition, and I think that's kind of it.
I didn't even know that. I don't even know what that artifact does.
Yeah, it's bad. Touch of Rekos is Rhianna's. This is I get health if I start losing artifact. I just want to win, bro. I just want to win.
It's the same thing as Knowledge Seed. Why is your strategy dependent on you losing?
Correct, exactly. Twilight Calamity is Etta's artifact. I think it's just in desperate need of a rework. It was made for the old Etta, then they reworked Etta and changed her completely, and now her artifact doesn't do anything because it was designed to work with the old Etta. So, like, why is this still here? Like, how did you guys, like, rework Etta and not go, maybe I should look at the artifact? Please, guys, like, do some more due diligence with your patches. We already talked about
Violet Talisman is very easy for me to just cut in here and do it. Listen, we had a war going on. We had Moonlight Dreamblade. We had Double-Edged Decrescent. We had Shepherds of the Hollow, right? We had all these artifacts vying in the evasion war going on. Like, what is the point of this one? It's the clear loser. It's an invasion artifact that you need to stack up turn after turn to get to its max effectiveness. Whoop-de-doo, it increases my attack. And technically, it does give the most evasion. It will give you 30% after 3 turns. But once again, artifacts are not sitting around for that long.
Yeah. And the last one to talk about is Wings of Light and Shadow, which has some amazing artwork, but I think it's just really bad even after its rework. I know Tristan and Red said that they played this on their Illinav. Personally, I would never play this over Elbris Ritual Sword. I think this is so much worse than Elbris Ritual Sword on Illinav. If you want to play this on Illinav, go for it, but like, it's literally just Illinav, and I think the only reason you're playing it on Illinav, if I'm being honest, is because you just don't have enough Elbris Ritual Swords. So in which case, we're here on a Selector video, right? Why would you not just take Elbris Ritual Sword over Wings of Light and Shadow?
You're going to need more. You're going to need more. Keep them separate. You're going to need more. Everybody wants them.
And then here, just for visual representation, you can see all of the artifacts that you can't choose. Somebody in the RGB comments of the last video was like, why didn't we talk about all the we can't choose things? It's because this video is already like an hour and a half long anyway. Do you guys really want to listen to our voices for another half hour, another hour? I don't think so.
Nope.
All right. And with that, we are done. It took a while, but hopefully you stayed till the end and enjoyed, Sue and Divine's wild ride. Before we close it up, is there anything you want to say, Divine?
I love you.
I love you too, buddy. If you're watching this, by the way, on the day that it airs, Rush Hour Royale is the tournament series that Divine cast with Valky. You can check that out this weekend. I'll let you, Divine, give you some more details.
Yeah, it's a simple enough. You don't have to worry about the artifacts. You don't have to worry about the heroes because it's going to be on a draft mode style format. There's a prize pool available. Some of that money being available through our sponsor, which we'll talk more about obviously when we get to the tournament. But you can win some money. You can play without having to worry about your gear or your units, without having to re-gear them. Because I know some of you guys are fighting the last stages of your AI bosses right now. So go ahead, just come by, have a good time, and I'll be happy to talk with you, cast some of your matches. Always happy to see whatever kooky brain strategies come out and stuff.
Yeah, so this video, I will try to get this out today, September 1st, as we're recording this, but it might go up very early, September 2nd. If you know, you happen to see it again on the day that it airs, if you made it all the way to the end, go check them out at twitch.tv/Valky. You can find them there for the tournament. Thank you so much, Divine, for doing this with me, and thank you guys for watching until the end. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I will catch you all in the next one. Have a good day now.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye.